destroy my whole life. Father, I'm still blind. Please open my eyes up and heal me and make me like you. Make me clean and holy like you are. Make me pure, pure as fire. Make me new, put on me white clothes. Make me perfect like you, my Father. Make me perfect like you, my Father. Good evening, friends. Ace Choir welcomes you to this virtual Holy Mass. This Mass was celebrated in the Archdiocese of Toronto by Father Seamus. Before beginning the Mass, I request all of you to keep your phones in silent mode. Thank you. Let's make sign of the cross in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's all rise for entrance hymn. Father God, I wonder how I managed to exist without the knowledge of your parenthood and your loving care. But now I am your child, I am adopted in your family, and I can never be alone. Oh, Father God, you're there beside me. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises forevermore. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises forevermore. Father God, I wonder how I managed to exist without the knowledge of your parenthood and your loving care. But now I am your child, I am adopted in your family, and I can never be alone. 'Cause Father God, you're there beside me. I will love you, Father. I will love you, Father. I will love you, Father, forevermore. I will love you, Father. I will love you, Father. I will love you, Father, forevermore.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all.
And with your spirit.
Welcome to the celebration of the daily TV Mass. My name is Father Seamus Hogan, and today our homilist is Deacon Robert Kingshorn. The televising of this Mass is made possible by the contribution from 3 donors. The first is Johannes Hartanto from Singapore for his son Alexander Patrick Tang on the occasion of his 33rd birthday today. The second is Elizabeth Phillips from Rothsay, New Brunswick for her personal intentions and in thanksgiving for the daily TV Mass. The third is a parishioner from Divine Infant Parish in Orleans, Ontario, in thanksgiving for the blessings received and for the protection of her family. Our thanks to our donors for the gift of this Mass, and today we wish Alexander Patrick Tang a happy birthday. The Second Vatican Council teaches that all Christians in whatever state or walk of life are called to the fullness of Christian life and to the perfection of charity. The call to marriage is a particular way of living the universal call to holiness given to every Christian in the sacrament of baptism. Our homilist today is Deacon Robert Kingshorn. He has been living the vocation of marriage and the call to the permanent diaconate for many years. Pope Francis, in his homily at the Jubilee of Deacons held in May 2016, reminded all deacons that one who serves cannot hoard his free time. He has to give up the idea of being the master of his day. The one who serves is not a slave to his own agenda, but rather is ever ready to deal with the unexpected, ever available to his brothers and sisters, and ever open to God's constant surprises. Our week of Masses for prayers for vocation continues today, and we ask you to keep all people discerning the call to married life and the permanent diaconate in your prayers. Brothers and sisters, let us acknowledge our sins and so prepare ourselves to celebrate the sacred mysteries. You were sent to heal the contrite of heart. Lord, have mercy.
Lord, have mercy.
You came to call sinners. Christ, have mercy.
Christ, have mercy.
You are seated at the right hand of the Father to intercede for us. Lord, have mercy.
Lord, have mercy.
May Almighty God have mercy on us, forgive us our sins, and bring us to everlasting life.
Amen.
Let us pray. O Lord, our God, who led Blessed Marie of the Incarnation to contemplate the wonder of the Trinity and filled her heart with apostolic zeal, grant that, with her as our intercessor and guide, we may live as witnesses to your love, so that those who come to know, love, and serve you may constantly grow in number. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever.
Amen.
In today's first reading, we will get to know that Philip goes to Jerusalem, to Gaza, and proclaim the good news.
First reading. A reading from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 8, verses 26 to 40. Then an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Get up and go towards the south to the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is the wilderness road." So he got up and went. Now there was an Ethiopian eunuch, a court official of the Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, in charge of her entire treasury. He had come to Jerusalem to worship and was returning home, seated in his chariot. He was reading the prophet Isaiah. Then the Spirit said to Philip, "Go over to this chariot and join it." So Philip ran up to it and heard him reading the prophet Isaiah. He asked, "Do you understand what you are reading?" He replied, "How can I unless someone guides me?" And he invited Philip to get in and sit beside him. Now, the passage of the scripture that he was reading was this: "Like a sheep he was led to the slaughter, and like a lamb silent before its shearer, so he does not open his mouth. In his humiliation, justice was denied him. Who can describe his generation? For his life is taken away from the earth." The eunuch asked Philip, "About whom, may I ask you? Does the prophet say this about himself or about someone else?" Then Philip began to speak, and starting with this scripture, he proclaimed to him the good news about Jesus. As they were going along the road, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, "Look, here is water. What is to prevent me from being baptized?" He commanded the chariot to stop, and both of them, Philip and the eunuch, went down into the water, and Philip baptized him. When they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord snatched Philip away. The eunuch saw him no more, and went on his way rejoicing. But Philip found himself at Azotus, and as he was passing through the region, he proclaimed the good news to all the towns until he came to Caesarea. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Bless our God, O peoples. Let the sound of his praise be heard, who has kept us among the living, and has not let our feet slip. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Come and hear, all you who fear God, and I will tell what he has done for me. I cried aloud to him, and he was extolled with my tongue. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Blessed be God, because he has not rejected my prayer, or removed his steadfast love from me. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy.
Let's all rise for acclamation.
takes this bread will live forever. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
In today's Gospel reading, we will hear that Jesus Christ is the living bread who came down from heaven.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Those who had been fed by the 5 loaves followed Jesus to the other side of the lake and asked him for a sign that they should believe in him. Jesus said to them, "No one can come to me unless drawn by the Father who sent me, and I will raise that person up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall be all taught by God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
When I was ordained to the diaconate, one of our parishioners gave me a beautiful card. And outside it said, "Your ordination to diaconate has great theological implications." I thought, wow, isn't this good? I opened it up and it said, "It shows that God has a sense of humour." That brought me crashing down very quickly. Well, today I'm going to talk about the sacraments of matrimony and holy orders, and one of the holy orders is diaconate, and specifically about the permanent diaconate, which is mainly married men. So, in some ways we have to remember, first of all, it is a call. God calls us. It's almost as we heard in that gospel today. Jesus said, "No one can come to me unless the Father draws them." So the call to sacraments are an answer to a call from God. And I think the call for me to diaconate started around about 1972 when I met my wife in prison. Now, don't get upset. We weren't inmates at the time. We were actually both going up to visit a prison about 150 kilometres north of the city here. And we were with a group that would go up every week to visit. So that was the beginning, and we have to remember that diaconate is a call within a call, and my first call is to marriage. And so Maria, who's one of the altar servers at this Mass, when we get married, this was the beginning of a walk together. And it's only within this walk together in marriage that we can come to hear that second call from God, the call from diaconate, and respond to that. So you see, it's without this walk together in marriage, this call wouldn't happen. That is our hope for our marriage. It's Christ within the midst of it. In my journey for diaconate, specifically for ordination, I knew of deacons years and years before I was drawn to it, but I saw deacons on the altar, and I said, that's all it is. It's not really what draws me to diaconate. But my wife Ria and myself were visiting Sunnybrook Hospital, seeing the patients, giving out communion. And that was a way of life for us every Sunday. And then we went to the seminary, St. Augustine Seminary, to give a talk to deacons. And we were talking about what we had done. And then I sat down, and there I was in the front row listening to another deacon. And he said, what I do, I go to the hospital and I call other people to come with me and I train them. And for some reason at that moment, my heart almost burned. I said, that's what I want to do. You see, all of a sudden I realised there was more to diaconate and what you see on the altar. Its main focus in many ways is to the poorest people in the city. It's the people who are hurting, those in the margins of society. This is what we're called to do and to be. They say we have to be out where other people don't want to go in many ways. So the deacons' roles are assigned to hospitals, ministries in prisons, or seniors' home, or in my case, I'm down in the streets of a city with the prostitutes, the drug addicts, and the drug dealers. So this very often is typical of a deacon's role in ministry. There's a bishop in Arizona who put it very, very well. He was ordaining a young man to a permanent diaconate, and he started off his homily by saying, deacons are ordained for trouble. He said, where there's darkness or trouble in my city, that's where I want my deacons to be. So I ask two things of you today. The first thing is to pray. All of you, please pray for those in vocation of marriage, that they can continue to be strong in that vocation that's hurt so much by the world these days. And pray for that. Also, any of you who are thinking of maybe becoming a permanent deacon, don't dismiss it. Don't think about it, pray about it. And then don't just say, oh, I'm not worthy of it. You know what? That's probably good, because God can't do anything with people who feel they're worthy. So this is what I ask today, that we continue to pray for the vocations of marriage and permanent diaconate as we continue with our prayers of the faithful. Heavenly Father, during the week of Masses and prayers for vocations, we offer you these prayers of hope. That parents and grandparents have the grace to guide their children through the trials of life and to help them discern not just their careers, but also their vocation. We pray to the Lord.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For those who struggle with the vows that they have made in their marriage or ordained life, that the mystery of God's deep love will strengthen them. We pray to the Lord.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For all Catholics struggling to discern their vocations, that the Holy Spirit give them wisdom and peace. We pray to the Lord.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Loving God, be with your church, with the Holy Father, our bishops, priests, deacons and religious, and with all your people, especially in places where the gift of the Mass is not currently available. Today, as we come together as a community from many different countries, we ask for your guidance in these difficult times of crisis. We pray to the Lord.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Heavenly Father, you made each of us to use our gifts in the body of Christ. We ask that you inspire young people whom you call to the priesthood and consecrated life to courageously follow your will. Send workers into your great harvest so that the gospel is preached, the poor are served with love, and the suffering are comforted, and your people are strengthened by the sacraments. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation. Thanks to your goodness, this bread we offer, fruit of the earth, work of your hands.
Pray, brothers and sisters, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God, the Almighty Father.
May the Lord accept the sacrifice of your hands, for the glory of his name, for our good and good of all his holy church.
Most merciful God, who are pleased to create in Blessed Marie of the Incarnation the new person in your image, the old having passed away, graciously grant, we pray, that renewed like her, we may offer you the acceptable sacrifice of conciliation through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit,
Lift up your hearts.
we lift them up to the Lord.
Let us give thanks to the Lord our God.
It is right and just.
It is truly right and just, our duty and our salvation, always and everywhere to give you thanks, Lord, Holy Father, Almighty and eternal God. For in the saints who consecrated themselves to Christ for the sake of the kingdom of heaven, it is right to celebrate the wonders of your providence, by which you call human nature back to its original holiness, and bring it to experience on this earth the gifts you promise in the new world to come. And so with all the angels and saints we praise you, as without end we acclaim.
Lord, we lift up your name.
You are indeed holy, O Lord, the fount of all holiness. Make holy, therefore, these gifts, we pray, by sending down your Spirit upon them like the dewfall, so that they may become for us the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. At the time he was betrayed and entered willingly into his passion, he took bread, and giving thanks, broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take this, all of you, and eat of it. For this is my body, which will be given up for you."
My Lord, my God.
In a similar way, when supper was ended, he took the chalice, and once more giving thanks, he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take this, all of you, and drink from it. For this is the chalice of my blood, the blood of the new and eternal covenant, which will be poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in memory of me."
My Lord,
The mystery of faith.
We proclaim your death, O Lord, and profess your resurrection until you come again.
Therefore, as we celebrate the memorial of his death and resurrection, we offer you, Lord, the bread of life and the chalice of salvation, giving thanks that you have held us worthy to be in your presence and minister to you. Humbly we pray that partaking of the body and blood of Christ, we may be gathered into one by the Holy Spirit. Remember, Lord, your church spread throughout the world and bring her to the fullness of charity, together with Francis our Pope and Thomas our Bishop and all the clergy. Remember also our brothers and sisters who have fallen asleep in the hope of the resurrection, and all who have died in your mercy. Welcome them into the light of your face. Have mercy on us all, we pray, that with the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God, with blessed Joseph her spouse, with your blessed apostles, and all the saints who have pleased you throughout the ages, we may merit to be co-heirs to eternal life, and may praise and glorify you through your Son, Jesus Christ. Through him and with him and in him, O God, Almighty Father, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, all glory and honor is yours forever and ever.
Amen.
At the Savior's command, and formed by divine teaching, we dare to say,
Our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Lord, from evil.
Deliver us, Lord, we pray, from every evil. Graciously grant peace in our days, that by the help of your mercy we may be always free from sin and safe from all distress, as we await the blessed hope and the coming of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever.
Lord Jesus Christ, who said to your apostles, "Peace I leave you, my peace I give you," look not on our sins, but on the faith of your church, and graciously grant her peace and unity in accordance with your will, who live and reign forever and ever.
Amen.
The peace of the Lord be with you always.
And with your spirit.
Let us offer each other the sign of peace.
Lamb of God,
You take away the sin of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Grant us peace.
Behold the Lamb of God. Behold him who takes away the sins of the world. Blessed are those who are called to the supper of the Lamb. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word, and my soul shall be healed.
since we cannot receive the Holy Communion, let us remember our first Holy Communion and best moment when we received the body and blood of Christ. Remembering that, let us partake in the spiritual communion by saying this prayer. O Immaculate Queen of heaven and earth, Mother of God, and mediator of every grace, that your dearly beloved Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, is truly, really, and substantially contained in the most holy sacrament. I love him above all things and long to receive him in my heart. Since now I cannot receive him sacramentally, be so good to place him spiritually in my soul and never permit me to be separated from him. Amen. I'm rejoicing night and day as I walk the narrow way. For the hand of God in all my life I see. And the reason of my bliss, yes, the secret cause is this, that the Comforter abides in me. He abides, hallelujah, he abides in me. He abides, hallelujah, he abides in me. I am rejoicing night and day as I walk the narrow way, for the Comforter abides in me. Once my heart was full of sins, once I had no peace within, till I heard how Jesus died upon the tree. Then I fell down at his feet, and the gates of peace was free. Now the Comforter abides in me. He abides, hallelujah, he abides in me. He abides, hallelujah, he abides in me. I'm rejoicing night and day as I walk the narrow way, for the Comforter abides in me. For the Comforter abides in me. For the Comforter abides God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. He will be my guide. Hold me closely to his side. With love and strength for each new day, he will make a way. He will make a way. By the roadway in the wilderness, he'll lead me. Rivers in the desert will I see. Heaven and earth will fade, but his word will still remain. He will do something new today. He will do something new today. God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. He will be my guide. Hold me closely to his side. With love and strength for each new day, he will make a way. He will make a way. Let us say the prayer after communion of Saint Thomas. I thank you, Lord, Almighty Father, everlasting God, for having been pleased, through no merit of mine, but of your great mercy alone, to feed me, a sinner, and your unworthy servant, with the precious body and blood of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. I pray that this Holy Communion may not be for my judgment and condemnation, but for my pardon and salvation. Let this Holy Communion be to me an armor of faith and a shield of goodwill, a cleansing of all vices, and a rooting out of all evil desires. May it increase love and patience, humility and obedience, and all virtues. May it be a firm defense against the evil designs of all my visible and invisible enemies, a perfect fighting of all the desires of soul and body. May this Holy Communion bring about a perfect union with you, the one true God, and at last enable me to reach eternal bliss when you will call me. I pray that you bring me a sinner to the indescribable feast, where you, with your Son and the Holy Spirit, are to your saints true light, full blessedness, everlasting joy, and perfect happiness, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen. Let us say a prayer for priest of Saint Therese. O Jesus, eternal priest, keep your priest within the shelter of your sacred heart, where none may touch them. Keep unstained their anointed hands, which daily touch your sacred body. Keep unsullied their lips, daily purpled with your precious blood. Keep pure and unearthly their hearts, sealed with the sublime mark of the priesthood. Let your holy love surround them and shield them from the world's contagion. Bless their labors with abundant fruit, and may the souls to whom they minister be their joy and consolation here and in heaven, their beautiful and everlasting crown. Amen.
Let us pray. By the power of this sacrament, Lord, we pray, lead us always in your love, through the example of Blessed Marie of the Incarnation, and bring to fulfillment the good works you have begun in us until the day of Christ Jesus, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life.
Thanks be to God. Son of God, you called us to your table. Son of God, in you we are made one. Lord Jesus Christ, take us by the hand. Lord Jesus Christ, stay with us today. Son of God, you leave us not alone. Son of God, in you we trust and hope. Lord Jesus Christ, take us by the hand. Lord Jesus Christ, stay with us today. Son of God, you light our path below. Son of God, you bring about the light. Lord Jesus Christ, take us by the hand. Lord Jesus Christ, stay with us today. Almighty Father, thank you for being with us. Thank you, Lord, that we are safe in this place. Lord, help us that we may hear your call and we may answer the call. Help us that when we are answering that call, it means we are receiving the call, and whatever, Lord, you are asking us to do, we can do it. Lord, I also pray for all the people, those who have a call for married life and also for the priesthood and nunhood. Lord, bless them that they can, if they are getting the call of marriage or priesthood or nunhood, they can accept that call and they can walk with you. They can say yes to your call. And with the hope, they can say you yes, so that forever and ever they can walk with your spirit, with you, and glorify you through their works. For this we pray, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Lord, from evil. Amen. Hail Mary,
Full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Let us say the Memorare together. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession, was left unaided. In spite of this confidence, I fly to thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. O Queen of Heaven, rejoice now. Hallelujah. Rejoice, for he who married no despair. Hallelujah. He is risen as he foretold. Hallelujah. Pray for us to the Father. Hallelujah.
Rejoice and be glad, O Virgin Mary. Hallelujah.
For the Lord has truly risen. Hallelujah.
Let us pray.
O God, you deign to give joy to the world through the resurrection of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Grant, we beseech you, that through his mother, the Virgin Mary, we may obtain the joys of everlasting life. Through the same Christ our Lord. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Virgin Mary, pray for us. Saint Joseph, pray for us. Saint Faustina, pray for us. Saint Josemaria Escriva, pray for us. Saint Mother Teresa, pray for us. Let's make sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, friends, for joining us in this virtual Holy Mass. Have a blessed week ahead. Stay safe and take precaution.